YouTube, what is going on? Welcome back to another Identity 5 video. And today I finally have for you guys the Season 15 Hunter tier list with the inclusion of Breaking Wheel, which I know a lot of people have been asking about. Hopefully I won't keep you guys too long for this video. I know with the last tier list I'm taking like a really long time to get through describing everything, and it's just kind of gone out of control on some of them. So we'll try to go through this as quickly as possible. We do have an addition of a new hunter that we will have to talk about, so yeah, let's just get into it. Without further ado, let's do it. Okay, so I'm gonna have we'll have 5 tiers for the hunter tier list. We're gonna have C tier, B tier, A- tier, and S tier. So where the first tier is C tier, and the first hunter in C tier is Ember. So Ember, for a while, has kind of always been in the C tier, being the worst hunter in the game. Now in rank, Ember is actually not a bad character. He has very good camping abilities, he has very good like map pressure and stuff like late game and whatever. But in reality, Ember is not very good because he can, one, get rotated very hard, and his early game chase is horrible. So he has a few things that he can work with. You know, once he gets a stun, he unlocks the he can get a flame, which he can turn into a fire phantom thingy. I don't really know. And the fire phantom thingy can therefore be used to like trap people and whatever. It's actually not when you get stunned, it's when you get stunned a certain amount of times. Yeah. But so you know, you can sometimes get hit with that. You can get a blink hit and then use your insolence to trap people with a puppet or whatever. But that just takes a lot of time. Like, you literally think about it this way, right? You have a hunter that can't really hit someone until you have your blink online. And on top of that, you're going to get rotated. So when you get rotated, it doesn't really matter, but you're going to get rotated as Ember against a good team. So in tournament, Ember's just not viable whatsoever. But he is pretty good in rank. But in reality, he's just kind of C tier. His full presence is pretty good if you know how to do all the plays with him. You can throw the red puppet. You can get no attack recovery hits on people. You know, you can get drop down hits. You can jump scare people. And yeah, once you have your full presence, you have very good map control. You can drop your puppets throughout the map. You can throw them. You can do whatever. It's very hard to, you know, finish Cypher Machines at the end game or open exit gates if Ember has puppets on both gates. But survivors can remove the puppets, and that can be a problem for Ember as well. And but the reality of the situation is he just gets kited early game and he gets rotated very hard in the early game. And that is simply why Ember is a C tier hunter. The next hunter in C tier is Geisha. Now, I know some of you guys may be mad at me for this, but Geisha is just not a very good hunter. The problem with Geisha is, and I know she's super fun to play, and I know you Geisha mains out there do very well with her, for the most part in ranked matches and stuff, but a problem with Geisha is that she's very, her chase may be pretty good. She has pretty good chase if you know what you're doing with her, but she has very limited cipher control. She has no real camping abilities, and a good survivor can kite her for a decent amount of time as well. She has a very small hitbox. Probably gets pallet stun more than any other hunter in the game. For those of you who play Geisha or play against Geisha, you probably know what I'm talking about. So, again, the biggest issue with Geisha is she can get rotated a bit in the early game. She usually typically would bring teleport with Geisha because there's no real reason to bring blink, and there's no real reason to bring much of anything. You can bring excitement and then maybe a trump card, but most Geishas build up down and you have teleport. And Geisha has pretty good chase in the early game. She's very fast in terms of getting around the map because you can throw a butterfly pretty far and then dash after it. It's not bad ability. But again, besides that, her cipher control, she doesn't really have any cipher control besides that, other than moving around quickly. And again, you can only use your dash only every once in a while because there's a cooldown. And there's a cooldown for the butterflies as well. So, additionally, survivors can kite her by picking up the butterfly and skill checking. So that's kind of a problem. Excuse me. And yeah, there's just a few issues with Geisha that just she's not the best for. Yeah, and additionally, her camping is basically, you can jump up and then you do the jump down ability, but it's really not as effective anymore. Because you can't jump down to a survivor. You can jump down to your butterfly, but top survivors will easily counter that every time, so there's not much you can really do. So in reality, Geisha's camp is very limited, doesn't really have much camping potential. Her chase is alright, but she doesn't have much cipher control. And just based around all those things, also small hitbox and gets pallet stun more than any hunter in the game. This makes Geisha a C tier hunter. The next hunter in C tier, some of you may also disagree, but this is where this hunter belongs, and this is Percy. Percy is not viable in tournaments whatsoever. He's okay in rank. We actually saw him when he first came out. We saw a lot of people using him, but the success rate with Percy was actually very low. Most hunters had very low win rates with him in the 50s. some in the 60s. You only see 1 or 2 actually get like high 80s or 90s. Those were two very skilled hunters, but yeah, the problem with Percy is he's just, not only does he get Cypher Rushed, survivors have kind of figured out how to kite him as well. He can get kited pretty easily if you know what you're doing as a survivor. He's hard to rotate, but that's not as relevant if you're getting kited and you can't share people, so you just get Cypher Rushed because of that anyways. And also in a tournament setting, even if you were in a position where you get a 4-person elimination, the survivor can simply just crawl to the dungeon. And you literally cannot do anything about it. If there are 2 survivors left and they finished at least 2 Cypher machines, both survivors will literally just run to dungeon and they'll just sit on it. And if you kill both of them, one of them will bleed out before the other one, and that other survivor will get it. And there's nothing you can do really as a Percy. So, again, in a tournament setting, not viable whatsoever. In a rank setting, he's playable, but again, he's not very good. A lot of survivors have figured out how to kite him and counter him, and he gets Cypher Rushed very, very hard. So, just because of those things, Percy is a C tier hunter. There's not much else to talk about because he doesn't camp. His chase is built to be very good. He can't get pulse stun if he has over 50 energy and he's going for like a swing or in the attack animation. He can jump over things with the Hulk Smash. He can use the charge ability to stop survivors. But again, in reality, even if you go down quickly against a Percy, as survivors, you can still easily win. And that is the biggest issue with Percy. And why is he is a C tier hunter. The next hunter in C tier is Ripper. Now, Ripper has just kind of gotten more and more unviable as time goes on, and I'm sorry to you Ripper mains out there. I'm sure most of you probably agree with me. A lot of the top Rippers are very, very good hunters. They just have a hard time winning because it's so hard to win with Ripper. And again, the issue with Ripper is that you know, while he has good chase with the Foggy Blades, he has good chase with the presence when you're invisible. He has pretty good camp as well with survivors. Even if you do get the Foggy Blade, most survivors are still able to make the rescue because there's like a 1-second animation where he's like swinging, where you can't really swing a second time. The survivor can just make the save if they're all the way up on the chair. So that's the biggest issue with Ripper, is that his camping is all right. If his camping is a little better, it'd be a problem. But the biggest issue with Ripper is his Cypher control is like non-existent. He's a very fast hunter, can move around very quickly, but he ties. If you kill someone instantly, you will tie every time. You're not going to win the match. Not only can Ripper get rotated very hard, he also, good survivors can kite him pretty well, effectively. See, his chase isn't the best compared to some other hunters. His camping isn't the best compared to some other hunters, and his Cypher control is pretty non-existent. So, for the most part, Ripper's just a C-tier hunter, and he is most likely going to get buffed. There has been a lot of stuff, I know on like the test servers or whatever, that's indicating that Ripper may receive a buff. We'll have to see about that. I think Netties might have even promised Ripper getting a buff. I'm not entirely sure, but we'll have to see about that. Anyways, Ripper is a C-tier hunter because of those reasons. Lack of Cypher control, not the best camp, and good survivors can kite him pretty effectively in the early game. That is it for C tier. Moving on to B tier. The first hunter in B tier is Gamekeeper. Now, this hunter recently got buffed. He was able to get those bear traps, for those of you who know that or are annoyed with them if you're a survivor. Bear traps, basically, the hunter can set them, the Gamekeeper can set them down at any point, and they stay on the ground until a survivor walks in them or a survivor gets shared within 20 meters. So if a survivor gets shared within 20 meters, the bear trap gets removed. If a survivor walks onto the bear trap, then it will trap them for a bit and then eventually get removed. So survivors can take them down. And yeah, it's a pretty good buff. The biggest issue with Gamekeeper is that he didn't have any real Cypher control, and now you gave him a buff that improves his chase, and I guess somewhat map pressure if a survivor happens to walk into a trap, and most survivors are pretty aware, and we'll see that. So in reality, you have an ability that improves his chase, but his chase was already fairly strong as it was, because of that broken, hook hitbox, where we're just like, go at someone, turn it like a 45-degree angle, and 45-degree angle. Basically 90 degrees. I mean, that's how broken it was. Not 90 degrees, but you know what I mean. And it would still hook the person. So yeah, that's the biggest problem with Gamekeeper, is that his Cypher control is still very bad. But he does have, he has better chase now with the traps. His camping is interesting. It's not necessarily good. You kind of rely on, like, getting terror shocks and stuff. You can force survivors to save after half, though. That is the one good thing about Gamekeeper, is that if a survivor goes in for the rescue, you can pull them back with the hook. It also slows them down when you pull them back, and you can force them to go after half. You can also, if you're lucky, get terror shocks with the hook as well. So it's actually very scary to save off a Gamekeeper. While it may not in theory, be that hard. It just can be very scary sometimes because they can sometimes get that lucky terror shock. And as a survivor, there's no real way to like predict that. It's just sort of, did the Gamekeeper get lucky? We'll have to see. It's not like where you can like look behind you when you rescue, see a hunter going to their swing animation, pull off the chair. Against a Gamekeeper, it's just so fast, you just can't. You just have to bait it and hope you get lucky. So, yeah, so Gamekeeper is kind of a bit of a gamble hunter in that manner, but for the most part, Gamekeeper is not bad. He can get ties. But the problem is he also gets rotated very hard yet again, and that is why Gamekeeper is a B tier hunter. The next hunter in B tier is Lizard, Evil Reptilians, aka Lucino. So Lizard actually was C tier last season, but he's not bad. I had him in C tier last season. I should have had him in B tier, but he's not a bad hunter. In that the biggest issue with him is his early game chase is very weak. He has pretty good camp and he has pretty good map control in that he has very good mobility. He can get around the map very quickly, and that's very beneficial for him. But in reality, again, his early game chase is very weak. In terms of rotations, it's a little bit harder to rotate him than other hunters because he has that jump that can get around the map very quickly, and that makes it difficult on survivors sometimes. But again, early game chase is not very good. So 2-story buildings can be very hard on him. Anything with a roof can be hard on him, like a shack area can be very difficult. On certain maps, he's very good. Something very open like Lakeside or Moonlit, he can be very strong. He could technically be strong on Church, but I don't really know. I'll be honest, I actually don't really know. But yeah, his early game chase. A lot of lizards bring peepers, but you really should be bringing blink sometimes. You can get away with peepers sometimes, but again, blink is very good. Or insolence. There's just a lot of things that you can have to help you out there. Once he has presence, he's actually can be very difficult to kite. Once he gets that jump, he can use the body slam, also known as the lethal crash, which you can crash down on survivors and injure them. You can also do this while camping. If a survivor goes in for a rescue, you jump up, you crash down, you hit them with that ability, and you hit them and stuff the rescue. And I think there's like a 1-second animation when that happens where the survivor can still make the save like a Ripper Foggy Blade. I actually don't know. Don't quote me on that. I actually don't know that for sure. I never play against Lizard in rank. I don't really play Lizard ever, so I actually wouldn't know. Nobody really plays Lizard that much, so. But yeah, that's the biggest issue with Lizard to go is his early game chase. But again, his camp is pretty strong and his map pressure is pretty good. So if you can get that down quick enough, Lizard's in a pretty good spot. But actually getting that down on a survivor can be difficult, and it can be challenging for a Lizard, and that is why he's a B tier hunter. The next hunter in B tier is Clown. Now, Clown is actually a very hard hunter to play. I think NetEase has him as like not NetEase, but like Identity 5 itself has him like a level 1 hunter to play instead of like 3, which is wrong. He's very difficult to play because you have to have very good controls. If you look at top players, there's only one, like right now, I think there's only one top Clown in NAU, and that's Ghost Queen. I don't think there's any other top Clowns. There was Mystic last season, but he hasn't played this season. So the reality is like Clown is like so difficult to play and win with that you just can't really. It's just so tough. Not only does he get Cypher Rush, it's so hard to have like really good controls in certain areas against survivors. Ghost Queen though is very good. Has very good controls with Clown. They never crash for the most part. It's insane how good their controls are. And they can get down. Clown is very hard to rotate because you can just dash around the map and catch up to survivors. If you communicate well with your survivors, you can hide and you can rotate fairly effectively, but not as well as other hunters. And if you have very good controls with Clown, the infinite dash is very hard to avoid. It's very hard to kite, and survivors can get downs. You can get downs on survivors very easily with Clown. You hit them with the infinite dash, and you blink them, and you get them down within 60 seconds. If you can double hit the rescuer with a slow drill, they'll be down for a long time, especially a mercenary. And yeah, they come in for the rescue. You dash them. You have no attack recovery. You just have a second animation where you dash them and you hit them regular. After they make the rescue. With Tide Turner, they're double hit with a slow drill, so it takes them a long time to go down after that. And Clown's not bad in that manner. He can also get lucky terror shocks with his dash. That's usually not the most common way to camp with him. The most common way, again, is to dash them and hit the rescuer a second time with your regular hit, and you double hit them that way. And then Clown's full presence is very good. He's very fast dash. He can get around the map very quickly. And it's not bad. But again, Clown just gets Cypher Rush very hard because of his lack of Cypher pressure. He might have good map control and or map pressure and sort of, in terms of getting around the map quickly, but his Cypher control is not very good. So his chase is good if you have very good controls with him, and it's sort of like Mad Eyes. You have to know what you're doing, right? It's not that actually with Mad Eyes it's more about having really high IQ. With Clown it's just about having really good control, and Mad Eyes you need good speed and good control as well. But yeah, so that's the biggest issue with Clown is Cypher control is not very good. But if you have very good controls with him, he can be a very good hunter. But he is a heavy tie hunter in that manner, so he is a B tier hunter. The next hunter in B tier and the last hunter in B tier is Photographer. Joseph the Photographer. Now, when Photo first came out, I think he was like S tier. He was really good. And over time, Survivors, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. Survivors figured out kind of how to beat him, how to counter him, what to heal off in Photo World, when to do this, whatever. And top tier Survivors can beat Photographers very easily in rank. Personally, when I play Survivor, I love to see Photographer in rank. But in reality, a good Photographer can be difficult to beat. I've lost quite a few games to Azrael in rank because his Photographer game sense is very good. And sometimes you play against other Photographers who you have to have very good game sense to play Photographer. Let's just put it that way. You have to know what you're doing. You have to know how to card trick. You have to know who to hit when. And that takes a lot of skill and a lot of IQ to play Photographer. But if you get that down, he could be a viable hunter. The biggest issue, again, is that Survivors, if you have very good communication, it's very difficult to get downs as Photographer. As a Survivor team, Photographer's a pretty good rank hunter because there's lack of communication because you can only play duos in top tiers instead of four-person VC. Four-person voice communication. So Photographer's not bad in that instance, but again, most Survivors, with their pings, Hunter change targets, Hunter is near me, whatever, you can communicate well to your other teammates even if you're not in voice communication with them, and you can counter Photographer that way. There's also a few little things like Barmaid strong against him, Doctor counters him, and there's just little things like that that can also be very difficult for a Photographer as well. So yeah, the biggest issue with Photographer is he has a hard time actually getting downs on Survivors because his chase is so weak. But, with good game sense, you can sometimes get downs on Survivors and secure wins, but it's very hard. You could kill someone instantly as Photo, and you probably still tie the match, just because it's so hard to get people down in the later game as well. But you never know. Photographer has good Cypher control in that when the Photo World ends, all the Cypher progress is decreased. So that can be very difficult on Survivors as well. But yeah, in reality, Photographer is just a high B tier hunter. There's not really much else to say. Survivors figure out how to counter him. In low tiers, he can be very good because Survivors don't know how to play against him. But once you get to the high tiers and Survivors know what they're doing, it can be very hard to win as Photographer. And that is why he's a B tier hunter. And he also struggles against voice communication, so he's not really viable, unfortunately, in tournament gameplay. Okay, that's it for B tier. Moving on to the next tier is A minus tier, and the first hunter in A minus tier is Soul Weaver. So Soul Weaver was very similar to Ripper and Photographer in that when she first came out, she was S tier. She was the best hunter in the game. But over time, she's been nerfed very hard, and there's hunters that have come out that are just better and better. A couple people actually told me to put her in B tier, but I actually think she definitely deserves A minus tier. She's very good for tying, and if you've seen very good Soul Weavers like Fafa play her, you will know what I'm talking about. So Soul Weaver is one of those hunters that has very good chase. In the early game, she can get rotated, but if you bring teleport, you can teleport on a Survivor, and then you have up, down, fast pallet breaking speed, and you have your webs charged up at that point, you can get it down pretty instantly. I mean, depending on the map, you can get down very, very fast to Soul Weaver, and it's very hard for Survivors to actually kite her. Not only does she slow them down with the webs, you can slow them down with the web shot, and you can catch up to Survivors like instantly. And yeah, there's some pretty good perks to playing Spider. If you're in a situation where you need to tie, she's not a bad character to play. There are better tie hunters, but she isn't bad. In that she has very good chase, and her camp's not bad. You can web shot the rescuer and hit them, set them up to be quarter damage later. If you're very good with aims, like certain hunters, I've seen Cats and Fafa hit very good web shots before with Soul Weaver, and that's not bad. I mean, if you can snipe a Survivor, good for you. If you're able to snipe a Survivor early game, after you have your presence, then they probably can't save, because then you just web shot them again, hit them, they go down. And as long as you can serve your webs, she can be very good. You just can't be too aggressive with them. She takes a lot of discipline, because you don't want to be too aggressive again with your webs. But Soul Weaver is one of those hunters that even if you're in a losing position, if you save your webs for the end game, you hit the survivor, you pop it, and you use your webs instantly down the survivor, then teleport in the exit gate. You can still put yourself in a position where you can tie matches. You can also do this when you have 3 survivors left in the game. You can down someone instantly, teleport in the exit gate, and maybe secure a 3-person elimination. You never know. But in reality, Soul Weaver has almost no cipher control, so the biggest issue with her is that she is a heavy tie hunter and gets cipher rush very hard, and that is why she's an A- tier hunter. The next hunter in A- tier is Wu Chang. Now, Wu Chang is very good in rank gameplay because he has, again, the lack of communication in tier. So for those of you who don't know, tier 6 to tier 8, so that's Alicorn, Champion, and Titan, you can only play duos with survivors. You cannot play 4-person on the same team. It can only be 2-person on the same team. That is what we call, duos legendary rank mode, tier 6 and above. So when you have that, it's very hard to communicate with your teammates. You can only use the pings like hunter change targets, hunters near me, get away from me, the basements here, whatever, dungeons here. And the hunter change targets is a very important ping to have when playing against a Wu Chang, because Wu Chang, every 30 seconds, you have that umbrella which you can teleport pretty much anywhere on the map. Some places you can't reach because it's too far, but for the most part, Wu Chang can cover a lot of distances on a lot of maps. And yeah, that's one of the really strong parts about Wu Chang is his map control is insane, probably one of the best in the game. He has very good mobility, can get around the map very quickly, can catch up to transition kiting survivors. But the biggest issue with Wu Chang is he gets kited very hard in the early game. He has no real abilities to actually catch survivors in the early game, which makes it very hard to actually get downs on survivors. So you do see some Wu Changs carrying Blink, some carrying Insolence. The most common strategy from what I've noticed in rank is double teleport. So you have your teleport as a trait, and then you have your umbrella teleport. So you can teleport around as much as possible, slow down the cypher progress that way, and eventually get downs on survivors. In tournament gameplay, it's very different. With the communication, it's very hard to jump scare survivors, almost impossible against a good team. And yeah, no, you can get you can get kited against a good team, very, very hard. So a lot of Wu Changs will bring like something like Insolence or something like Blink in tournament gameplay to make it easier to get downs on survivors. And in tournament gameplay, Wu Chang is more of a tie hunter, and that's a pretty common theme, especially in China. If you get a tie as a hunter, you're in a very good spot. It's very, very survivor sided. In tournament, if you see China, maybe not so much here in NAEU because the hunters are very good, and some of the survivors. I don't think a lot of the survivors here have as much time to practice as much as the survivors do in China, because some of the survivors in China literally do it for a living, whereas NAEU we do not, obviously. So for the most part, so yeah. But anyways, in reality, Wu Chang is very strong. There are some very, very good Wu Chang players like All For One and Tyrone from Wii, but and they can even win against 4-person voice communication pretty easily with the amount of skills they have. However, it can be very hard to, again, against a good 4-person VC, it can be very hard to win as Wu Chang because of the amount of communication and rotation from survivors, leaving the cyber machines early, not getting jump scared, and setting themselves up in positions where they can kite very well in the early game. And that is simply why Wu Chang is an A- tier hunter. He has very good chase once he has presence. The Soul Siphon, you can Soul Siphon survivors. I mean, that's broke. Bell is very strong as well. You literally stop survivors in their tracks. You run up to them and hit them. The full presence can instantly Soul Siphon, which is also broke. Instantly Bell. Very, very good abilities, but you actually have to unlock that presence if you want to be successful with Wu Chang. And that's why, again, why he's an A- tier hunter. The next hunter in A- tier is Mad Eyes. Now, Mad Eyes... for those of you who've seen the test server, there's a chance Mad Eyes will get nerfed very, very hard to a point where he's not really viable. And this is not with any of those changes because we don't know if any of them will actually come into effect. If NetEase tends to do that stuff in the test server, it doesn't always put them in or incorporate them into our gameplay, and that may or may not happen. But in reality, Mad Eyes is probably S tier in rank. Mad Eyes actually good. Mad Eyes is S tier in rank. In tournament, it's a little bit harder because Mad Eyes can get counter-picked very, very hard. There's a lot of counters to Mad Eyes, like Priest is very strong, Doctor is very strong, Seer can be very strong because you can get the Owls pretty easily off of Mad Eyes. Ford can be pretty strong because you can stun them off your console. Wildling, little things like Batter, Enchantress, who else? Prospector. You can harass the Mad Eyes, stun them off their consoles. and it can be very difficult on a Mad Eyes to actually harass survivors with their fences because you constantly are knocking them off cipher machines. So that is the biggest issue with Mad Eyes, is he can get counterpicked very easily. But in rank, when you have no idea what the hunter is and you're against teams with lack of communication, Mad Eyes can be very, very strong and very difficult to beat. Yeah, Mad Eyes has pretty much no chase in that he just walks. But he has chase in which he can block off certain areas with the fences and make it so survivors can't go there. You can trap them that way. He has very, very broken camp because you can literally block off pathways for survivors to go in for rescues. That's why banning Priestess as a Mad Eyes is pretty strong, because Priestess can portal through those fences and still make the rescue, whereas many survivors cannot get through the fences. And you see a lot of forwards just insta-stunning a Mad Eyes and insta-rescuing a Mad Eyes, or just any other rescuer insta-rescuing a Mad Eyes, because his camp is so good. So that is the biggest issue with Mad Eyes, is seeing it counterpicked, and against teams with good communication, they can typically do well against the Mad Eyes, and that is why Mad Eyes is a A- tier hunter. Moving on to A tier, although actually I will say this real quick, very good Mad Eyes players can be A tier, definitely. Mad Eyes is just takes a lot of skill and is very hard to play. Gotta stretch. Okay. Moving on to A tier, the next hunter in A tier, or the first hunter in A tier, is Violinist. Violinist is, when he first came out, he was very high A tier. He was very hard to beat. He may be a little bit higher A tier than I have him. I don't really know. This is just kind of where I have him because I think this is probably what he deserves currently. But the biggest problem with Violinist is that a lot of survivors, he's easier, Violinist is a little bit easier to kite than some of the other hunters, and his camp isn't as strong as some of the other hunters. So he's just like a slightly weaker version than something like Bon, than something like Sculptor, something like Anne, Disciple. So even Axploit for that matter. So the biggest issue with Violinist is that he can get kited pretty easily. He's a very slow hunter. So, early game he can get transition kited pretty hard. And he can get rotated very, very hard as well. Again, very slow hunter. Once you have your presence, you can slow down survivors. It becomes a lot easier. But in reality, survivors can dodge the notes pretty easily and force regular hits. For example, like a Seer, you just force an owl hit, a regular hit, and another regular hit, and that just wastes so much time because the Seer gets so much time to transition because of how slow Violinist is, and it can be very difficult on a hunter that way. And the best case scenario, you can play for a tie. But again, if you get rotated as Violinist, you will lose, and Violinist gets rotated very hard. So Violinist's camp is also not very good. If you hit the string on the survivor, great. You can double hit a mercenary. You can maybe stuff a rescue if you're lucky. But it's just not great overall. A lot of survivors can dodge it pretty easily. His full presence is pretty good. You can put the notes in a position where you go in for the rescuer goes in, then you push the notes, and you hit the rescued person and the rescuer, and then you hit the rescuer again for a double hit. You can also stuff rescues that way. If you miss the note, you get full presence. Maybe you hit them, and you get the second hit for the stuff. So that's not bad at all. But yeah, Violinist isn't a bad hunter overall. He has pretty good chase, pretty good camp, but there are, the higher A tier hunters are a little bit better than him in those instances, so that is why he's a low A tier hunter. The next hunter in A tier is Feaster. Now, Feaster has a lot of is very similar to Violinist in that very slow hunter, can get rotated very, very easily. But Feaster's chase, I think I'd have to say it's probably slightly weaker than Violinist, but so much so that it's not really that big of a deal, and I don't even know if it is in some places, but Feaster's hitbox is a lot bigger. Feaster has the longest hitbox in the game. This charge attack is the longest charge attack hitbox in the entire game. And unfortunately, they're talking about nerfing him in the test servers, which sucks because I personally am a Feaster main myself. But yeah. So Feaster has tentacles. I'm sure most of you know. You can block up pathways, you can block up windows, pallets, whatever it may be. But a good survivor can loop a tentacle and force regular hits, and that can be a problem. As a Violinist, sometimes you can get a string hit on a survivor if you get them like super close up. You can sometimes just quickly drop the note and it hits them. With a Feaster, you can't really do that. A survivor can really just run into you to avoid the tentacle and force regular hit every time. Now, I actually think Feaster's camp is a little bit better than Violinist, in that Feaster can cut off the rescuer from a distance. A lot of them bring triple Berserker, so you have very fast attack recovery. Then you have a tentacle waiting on chair for the person you just hit, and you can stuff the rescue that way. Now, this is less effective in something like China, because a lot of the survivors know how to counter Feaster, know how to kite Feaster, know how to rescue off Feaster. Here in NAEU, it's a little bit more difficult. People don't a lot of people I've noticed don't really learn how to kite Feaster. They learn how to kite other hunters, but a lot of survivors struggle against Feaster here for some reason. I really don't know why, but they do. And if you notice, like Feaster leaderboard, a lot of the top Feasters have very high win rates, mainly because of that. So again, yeah, biggest issue with Feaster is that he gets rotated very hard, and he can get kited in the early game against good survivors. And but Feaster has very good camp. He has very good basement camp. He actually has the best basement camp in the game because of his very large hitbox, and because you can basically just drop a bunch of tentacles in basement with a curse mark on a survivor and spam curse mark. For those of you who don't know what curse mark is, when you use a regular tentacle, you have a 4-second cooldown before you can use a second one. But when you have curse mark, you can use them like bam bam every second. And the curse mark, basically, you curse a survivor, and any tentacle near that survivor, you can throw it down whenever you want. Even if you're not even near that survivor, you don't even see them. But you can still throw down the tentacle, and you can throw it down like consistently every second if you have a bunch of them. So Feaster's full presence camp is very good. You can just drop a bunch of curse mark tentacles on survivors, and it's very hard to rescue. So yeah, for the most part, that is why Feaster's a low A tier hunter. Can get rotated, can get kited, but has good camp and a very broken hitbox. Yeah, he also, the biggest underrated thing about Feaster, which makes him slightly better than Violinist in my opinion, is that Feaster can use tentacles to find the location of the closest survivor. Explorers cannot hide from a Feaster. They cannot hide from a Feaster because a Feaster can always use the tentacle to point to the location of the closest survivor. You can use that to cut off the rescuer from a distance. You can use that to find any survivors if you're looking for someone hiding, whatever it may be. You can't hide from a Feaster, that is why Feaster is a low A tier hunter. Moving into the mid-range of A tier here, the next hunter in A tier is Bloody Queen. Now, Bloody Queen used to be, again, also more like higher A tier, but she's sort of fallen out of favor to Disciple, actually. And this has happened quite a bit, not so much here in NAEU, but a lot in China. And the biggest issue with Bloody Queen that I think a lot of the China players have an issue with is that, well, she may not get rotated very easily, and she may not get kited very easily. The biggest issue with Bloody Queen is that she doesn't really have any win potential, and that her mirror takes so long to recharge, and she has no camping whatsoever. The difference between her and something like Disciple is that Disciple actually has camping potential, double hit potential, and stuff potential. While it may be very hard to do that against good survivors, she actually has the ability to do that, whereas Bloody Queen does not. And also her cooldown is, Bloody Queen's cooldown is a lot longer than Disciple. So Bloody Queen has very good chase in that it's very hard to kite out a mirror image. Also, she has very good map control because you can mirror around the map and switch places. You can target survivors to knock them off cipher machines to slow down decoding. But in reality, with a 15-second cooldown on that mirror, it takes a very long time to get survivors down, and it's very hard to actually win with Bloody Queen. And she's a very, very heavy TIE hunter, one of the heaviest TIE hunters in the game currently, and that is why she's low A tier. There's not much else to say besides that. The next hunter in A tier is Axeboy. Now Axeboy is Axeboy used to be very, very high A tier, but he's really kind of fallen out of favor with these newer hunters that have come in, and you know, newer changes in China with like Bon, Disciple, Sculptor, Dream, which being just used more than Axeboy. And Axeboy is Axeboy has good. Axeboy is very, very versatile. He has a lot of good things going for him. He has very good chase. It's hard to dodge the flames, and if if the Axeboy has good aim, you can dodge them though. It's actually it's not that hard, but dodging the purple ones can be difficult because of how fast they come in and they kind of keep circling you, which is super annoying. But whatever. Also the corrupt area, once he has full presence, is very hard to kite, but if you're able to dodge the flame, you probably still will end up getting hit. That's the thing with Axeboy. If you manage to dodge the flame, he gets an insane speed boost, which he can catch up to you and still manage to get the hit. And, that can be an issue kiting Axeboy. So Axeboy is he has very strong chase. His camp is pretty good as well. If you go into a rescue with a purple flame, a good Axeboy would probably be able to double hit you the majority of the time. If they just have the tree to camp with, it's a lot harder to actually get a flame hit. Because the flames will hit the chair. They'll kind of auto-aim to the chair sometimes and hit the survivor on chair instead of the person like actually going into the rescue. And that can be an issue, when camping with an Axeboy. So yeah, Axeboy may have good chase, may have good cipher control. Not really cipher control. He has good map pressure, can get around the map very quickly with those pathways, with the flames, with the trees, whatever happens to be. And his camp is pretty good. So he has good chase, good camp, but the cipher control isn't the best. He has good mobility, but again, it's hard to control the cipher machines when you want to camp. Axeboy can go, 2 ciphers back and forth between chair and ciphers, which is pretty good. But in reality, there are some hunters that have slightly better for him. He's also very luck based in terms of where your trees spawn. If your trees spawn in areas that are like very beneficial for you, in that you know, they spawn in good kiting areas where survivors like to kite. The trees are already there to help you, help you kill them and get them down. That's very good for you. But if they don't spawn in very good areas, they spawn kind of like in corners or in the open where survivors never really go to, then it's kind of subpar and can be very issue. So Axeboy can be very luck based, and that is why he's a mid A tier hunter. The next hunter in A tier is the new hunter, that is the Breaking Wheel. Now, Breaking Wheel is very, very difficult to play in that you have to have some like insane controls to get him down and play him effectively. So Breaking Wheel is sort of like Clown, but for Clown to change your angle, you change your your camera screen, whatever. With Breaking Wheel, you do the little arrow keys. So yeah, so Breaking Wheel's controls are a little bit different than Clown. He is very hard to control, very, very hard to control. Certain areas you can't even get survivors because of like how you can't control like windows, like shack windows, and church windows. You can't do anything as a Breaking Wheel, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, excuse me. Yeah, I did not get a lot of sleep. I've been working too much recently. Anyways, with Breaking Wheel, he has with good controls, he is very, very difficult to kite. He can get rebound kited somewhat, but again, the biggest issue with him is mastering his controls. Once you have those controls down, he's he is a very formidable hunter to go against. In that, if you get roll over the survivor twice and you hit them, they go down and instantly. So you can trap survivors to slow them down. If you're able to dodge the traps, they'll usually have their blink up by then. You can blink you for the kill, but he can get rebound kited in that. Once you go in for a rescue, you can you can make the save, and then the survivor can potentially rebound kite. You have to get 2 spikes on them before you can snap them, which is his first presence ability. Basically, what that does is we call that the Thanos snap. What that does is it removes the spikes on the survivor if they're within a certain range of you, and deals damage to that survivor based off the amount of spikes they had on them. So if they had 2 spikes and they're half health because they got rescued, they'll go down instantly. Well, not instantly like this Tide Turner, of course, but they'll go down, which is very good for the hunter, obviously. Also, when you have presence, you can use the little spikes that stick out from the side, which make it easier to roll over survivors as well. So that's not bad. As well, but yeah, and you have your traps, which are very beneficial as well. So there's a lot of things going for him. He has very good chase, again, if you have very good control. His full presence is very, very good. So what his full presence does is when he jumps out of his wheel form, any survivors within the vicinity will receive a spike, and you can just snap the survivor. For example, if they're at half health, you just roll over them once, jump out of wheel form, give them a second spike, and Thanos snap them and kill them instantly. So Breaking Wheel has good chase if you have the controls down. He has good camp once you have full presence. Without full presence, it's a lot harder to camp with him effectively, and actually stuff rescues, you can't really do it that often. But full presence is very good. And yeah, you really can't rotate him because of how fast he is. He has very good map control, can get around the map very, very quickly with his speed. And that can be very difficult on survivors sometimes, and that is why he's a high A tier hunter, and looking very strong, like a potential tournament hunter in the meta because he can't get rotated, and we'll have to see how that shapes up in the future. The next hunter in A tier is Anne Disciple. Anne used to be like C tier and B tier and whatever, but she got her buff, and China Hunt players actually realized she was very good. So then we realized she was very good after China did it, because as NAEU we do everything after China, because we don't really figure stuff out on our own because we need to be babysat by China apparently. But that's okay. It's alright. We'll figure out stuff eventually. Anne is like Bloody Queen in that she has very good chase. She's very, very hard to kite. However, she has more win potential than Bloody Queen because she has good camping. And she can also, if you cat a survivor, you can prevent them from decoding or using any abilities for a few seconds. So normally survivors that would be able to counter something like Bloody Queen, like Priestess portaling away when using the mirror, or forward footballing away when using the mirror, whatever it may be, you know, or elbow padding away, and can cancel that. She can turn that off and make it so you can't do it. Now, once you cancel it, you cannot jump on them and stun them with the cats, but you can cancel them for a limited amount of time. So that's pretty good. So yeah, not only does she have win potential, she has very good chase. She has a good camp as well, and again has more win potential than Bloody Queen. And she's a pretty fast hunter. You can jump around the map pretty easily. She has pretty good map mobility in that instance, and that makes her a high A tier hunter. The next hunter in A tier, the last hunter in A tier, is Bon Bon. Bon Bon is, I'm sure most people hate Bon Bon. His chase is very good if you know what you're doing. If you get the chain bombs, a lot of hunters in China don't miss a lot of bombs. The biggest issue with Bon Bon is he can get transition kited very hard. That's the downside to him. But once you're in like closed, confined areas, it becomes a lot harder to kite a Bon Bon. They get those chain bombs, which basically the second bomb you throw down bombs instantly, and it can be very hard. And I apologize, guys. My nose keeps itching, so I'm gonna trash that. But he can be very hard to kite in that instance. He has the best camp in the game. Okay, we're gonna say right now, Bon Bon is the best camping hunter in the game. In that Bon Bon literally has the highest stuff, potential and stuff rate than any other hunter. You see this happen in a lot of tournament gameplay. If a survivor goes down at all to a Bon Bon, even if it was a good kite, they will sometimes just leave them on share to die. Bon Bon is very good for getting ties in tournaments, and that is very strong in a tournament setting. Because a lot of survivors, how they play against Bon Bon is they'll bring like 2 rescuers, which you don't really want to chase as a Bon Bon. Sometimes 3, maybe an explorer that you can't find. And you'll have 1 survivor bring max snooze. So that survivor will get teleported on once they get quenching effect, and they'll kite. Then they go down quickly because the Bon Bon has 6 bombs built up and it's very hard to kite them. And the survivors will not save. The survivor will most likely die in a corner with max snooze. You may have one of the rescuers, like a wildling or mercenary, go get tinnitus, so the Bon Bon doesn't leave the chair. But you rush ciphers, and survivors are able to secure ties. But it's very hard. It's actually very hard to beat a Bon Bon, even in a tournament setting, even in China, because Bon Bon can get the downs. Now, the most common theme that I actually see in China happening a lot is that what happens is survivors kite to dungeon. Now, Bon Bon doesn't have very good endgame chase. Once he has full presence, he's very hard to kite still, but it's not like something where he can like mirror with the tension like a Bloody Queen, right? Or cat a survivor with the tension like an ant. With Bon Bon, you have to get them down with bombs on a regular hit, or just 4 bombs, or 5 if it's a mercenary, right? So a common theme in China is Bon Bon gets kited to dungeon, and that's a common theme here as well. But you know. So for that matter, Bon Bon is a high A tier hunter, the best hunter in A tier, not quite S tier though. Very good chase, very good camp, but very limited map pressure, and can get side fresh very hard. And that is why he is best camping hunter in the game though. But that is why he is an A tier hunter. Oh my god, I'm losing my breath. We're almost done here. Moving on to S tier, this is the last 2 hunters. The first hunter in S tier, and it's kind of a debate whether or not to put this hunter in A or S tier, but the first hunter in S tier, some people may have her in A tier, some may have her in S. But that is the Sculptor. Sculptor is very difficult to kite in that she can block. She's kind of like Violinist, but with like way more notes. You can block off. That's not really a good example, but you get what I'm saying. She can block off like pathways with the statues. And she's a chip hunter, and chip hunters typically have been very good in the meta. The Bon Bon Sculptor. So Sculptor can block off survivors with the statues. If you get a lucky enough statue, you can pull them all the way back towards you to get a free hit. And her full presence is broke. Her full presence is just broke. You just drop 2 statues next to each other. If they're close enough, the survivor hits them. It does a quarter damage. So that's very good. So she has pretty good chase early game. A lot of survivors in China, you have to constantly transition kite a Sculptor, and that's a common theme. Against Sculptor is transition kiting, and that can be one way to be here. You kind of run in the open, force them to regular hit you instead of statue hitting you. You don't really want to take a lot of risks when kiting Sculptor, like by running into pallets, running against walls if possible. You want to avoid getting statued at all, and force the hunter to hit you twice or 3 times if you have a seer on your team. So Sculptor has good chase. She has good cipher pressure because she can camp and throw her chisel on a cipher machine and push the survivor off the cipher for however long the chisel is. They're actually nerfing it though, so that's good. That's necessary, in my opinion. And she has good camp as well. It's hard to save off a Sculptor. The statues will cancel the rescue animation, make you restart it. And full presence Sculptor is very difficult to save off because you get the statue hits with the full presence. You can also, if the survivors are trying to open an exit gate, you can go to one exit gate and then chisel the other one. And sometimes you can snipe survivors and get them down on the exit gates, teleport on them, share them, whatever. And Sculptor can literally down, if you go in for a rescue against a Sculptor, this is a common theme. If you go in for a rescue against a Sculptor, you get hit with like one statue but still make the rescue, so you have a quarter health left. The Sculptor will, later in the game when she has full presence, throw her chisel on you, use her full presence to snipe you down, and you're down. You basically got double hit, but it happens later in the game when you need to be decoding, and that can be the difference between wins and matches, and wins and losses, or wins and ties, or ties and losses against the Sculptor, and that is why Sculptor is an S tier hunter. Moving on to the final hunter in S tier. Finally, we got there. That is Dream Witch. I think it's pretty obvious Dream Witch is the best hunter in the game. With her possible nerfs in the test server, she may be not as good anymore. Probably not. It'll probably kill her, to be honest. However, that has not happened yet. So, Dream Witch is currently still S tier. Dream Witch is one of those hunters that requires, in rank, she's broken beyond belief. Like, if you're a good enough Dream Witch, you will never really lose in rank. Because not only, in China it's a little bit different, in NAEU, a lot of survivors don't know how to play against her. Also with a lack of communication, you know, saying when to remove leeches, when to heal, when to do this, whatever. To beat a Dream Witch, for the most part, you need very, very good communication amongst your survivors. And having, you know, 4-person VC is very, very important for that. So Dream Witch has the best sort of like map pressure and control than any other hunter in the game. You can leech survivors, which will follow them around the map. You have your main spawn, which will never go away. Dream Witch has good chase in that if you have lack of communication in rank, you can jump scare, get a free hit on a survivor, then patrol them for the kill. Or if you're against a 4-person VC, you can just double patrol her. It's very difficult to rotate a Dream Witch because of how fast she is. You can do it to an extent, but it's not as good as like other hunters, like Feaster or, I don't know, Violinist, right? So yeah, the most common thing with Dream Witch is double patroller to get the down. Sometimes you'll see blink as well, depending on the map. If you die against a Dream Witch, they will send your leech to go harass a cipher machine, so you can literally stop someone from decoding a cipher while camping at the same time. You can also have your leech cut off the rescuer from a distance, hit them once, like hit the mercenary from a distance. They go up to the chair. You have the spawn follower still in chair. You hit the mercenary again for the double hit. You can also stuff rescues if it's like a priestess or a mechanic or whatever. And yeah, Dream Witch has good camp in that manner. So Dream Witch has usually good early game. If you have a good early game as a survivor side against the Dream Witch, you will typically be able to win. But you need to have a very exceptional early game. If not, Dream Witch will take advantage. One little mistake against a Dream Witch will literally be a win to a loss, not even a tie. If you give a free hit to a Dream Witch, if you get jump scared, you give them a free hit, Dream Witch will always capitalize on that, and that is the difference between games. So beating a Dream Witch requires really how good the survivors play, how good they communicate, and how well they are, how proficient they are at playing against something like a Dream Witch. So, yeah, well, Dream Witch is the best hunter in the game. She can be beat with good communication, but if you don't have that good communication, it can be very difficult. She's almost impossible to kite in terms of double patroller. She has good camp because she can cut off the rescuer. She has good cipher control because she can drop leeches on cipher machines to push survivors off of ciphers. And she has very good end game as well. Once you actually pop the last ciphers, if you manage to get that off, she can camp one of the gates with one of the spawn followers and camp the other gate with the leech. So you're really required to de-leech before you want to pop the last cipher machine, or else it puts you in a rough position as a survivor team. So yeah, that's the biggest issue with Dream Witch. Or not the issue with Dream Witch, the issue of survivors against Dream Witch. Sorry, I've been talking so long, I'm just like not even, I'm barely like staying in it, and I'm super tired because I can get up at 6 a.m. to work tomorrow. What time is it now? It's almost 10. It's not too bad, but you know. So that is why Dream Witch is the best hunter in the game. She has the best map pressure. It's very difficult to actually kite. And has the best win potential and best 4-person elimination potential out of any hunter in the entire game. And that is why she's the most viable in not only rank and tournament gameplay. She's also the most banned hunter in rank, the most commonly used first-round hunter in tournament gameplay. She's just the best hunter in the game, and that is why Dream Witch is S tier. That is going to wrap it up for the tier list, guys. We finally got through it with 49 minutes, so that's not too bad. That's a little bit of improvement from the 1 hour we had last time. So hopefully this video was helpful. If you guys, don't forget to comment below your opinions and thoughts. Keep in mind, guys, I did talk to many top players who are my friends that we talked about making this tier list. So I have a lot of very, very valuable and very good opinions put into this list. Also some statistics as well. So for the most part, this is accurate as me and the people I talked to could get it. So hopefully this is, again, helpful for you guys. Yeah, that's going to wrap it up for the video, guys. Don't forget to check out the links to the Identity 5 Community League Discord server for those of you who have been watching the league. I really appreciate it. Everyone else who's playing appreciates it as well. You can see some very top teams, some of the best in the North America European server compete in that. Also, don't forget to check out the Fusion Discord. The link to that is in the video description below. If you guys like the video, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. I really do appreciate it, and I'll see you all in the next one.